The Germanic forests stretched endlessly beyond the Roman fortifications, their shadows concealing threats that had haunted legionnaires for generations. Marcus Flavius Tertius stood at his post along the wooden palisade, his weathered hands gripping a pilum that had seen 3 campaigns across the Rhine. The year was 15 AD, and Germanicus Caesar's forces had been pushing deeper into hostile territory, seeking to avenge the catastrophic defeat at Teutoburg Forest 6 years earlier. The morning mist clung to the valley below, like the breath of ancient gods, but Marcus saw only death in its tendrils. At 32, he had served Rome for 14 years, long enough to witness the screams of dying comrades, the sight of eagles falling into barbarian hands, and the weight of empire pressing down upon mortal shoulders. His scarred face told stories of battles across Gaul, Pannonia, and now this cursed Germanic wilderness where Roman discipline met the fury of tribal warfare. The camp behind him buzzed with the methodical preparation that defined Roman military excellence. Centurions barked orders in the crisp morning air, their vine staffs striking against bronze-studded leather as they maintained the discipline that had built an empire. The smell of wood smoke mixed with the acrid tang of metalwork as armorsmiths hammered dents from lorica segmentata, the segmented armor that both protected and burdened every legionnaire. This was the machinery of conquest, precise, relentless, and unforgiving. Marcus belonged to the Legio Furs Germanica, one of the most prestigious units in the Roman army. Yet prestige meant little when facing the guerrilla tactics of Germanic tribes, who knew every path, every ambush point, every way to turn Roman strength into Roman weakness. The previous week, an entire cohort had disappeared during a routine patrol, leaving only blood-soaked earth and scattered equipment as evidence of their fate. The psychological toll was becoming unbearable. The sound of cornu horns echoed across the camp, signaling the morning assembly. Marcus shouldered his equipment, the rectangular scutum shield that could protect a man's entire body, the gladius short sword designed for close combat, and the heavy pack containing everything from cooking utensils to construction tools. A Roman soldier was expected to be warrior, engineer, and builder simultaneously, carrying the weight of civilization into the wilderness. Centurion Lucius Cassius addressed the assembled century with the voice of a man who had seen Rome's borders expand across 3 continents. His scarred hands gestured toward the forest as he outlined the day's mission. A reconnaissance in force to locate Germanic settlements and assess their defensive capabilities. It was routine work, the kind of patrol that had been conducted thousands of times across the empire's frontiers. But routine in Germania meant constant danger. The tribes had learned from Arminius and his devastating victory at Teutoburg, adopting tactics that negated Roman advantages in open combat. They struck from concealment, melted away before Roman formations could respond, and turned the dense forests into killing grounds where discipline meant little and survival depended on instinct. As the century moved out through the camp's gates, Marcus felt the familiar weight of fear settling in his chest. It was a rational fear, born of experience and tactical understanding. The Germanic tribes were not the undisciplined barbarians that Roman propaganda portrayed. They were skilled warriors fighting for their homeland, using terrain and tactics that had already claimed 3 entire legions. The patrol moved in standard formation, scouts ahead, main body in column, rear guard watching for pursuit. Their hobnailed Calligi boots crunched against the forest floor as they followed game trails deeper into territory that belonged more to wolf and bear than to Rome. The trees seemed to close in around them, filtering sunlight into scattered patches that played tricks on tired eyes. 2 hours into the patrol, the attack came with the swift brutality that characterized Germanic warfare. War cries erupted from the undergrowth as painted warriors emerged from concealment, their long spears and seax knives gleaming in the filtered light. The forest exploded into chaos as Roman discipline met tribal fury in the confined space between ancient trees. Marcus heard Centurion Cassius shouting orders, trying to form the century into a defensive line, but the terrain made standard formations impossible. Men stumbled over roots and rocks as they struggled to bring their shields to bear against attacks from multiple directions. The carefully drilled movements that worked so well on open ground became clumsy and ineffective in the dense underbrush. A Germanic warrior charged directly at Marcus, his spear aimed at the gap between shield and helmet. Time seemed to slow as Marcus recognized the choice before him. Stand and fight with likely death as the outcome, or break ranks and seek safety in flight. Every fiber of Roman military training demanded he hold his position, maintain formation, and trust in the collective strength of his comrades. But 14 years of warfare had taught Marcus that dead soldiers served no one, and the rational part of his mind calculated the odds with brutal clarity. The century was outnumbered, surrounded, and fighting in terrain that favored their enemies. This was not a glorious battle that would be commemorated in marble and bronze. This was a slaughter waiting to happen. The Germanic spear thrust missed his face by inches, and in that moment of decision, Marcus turned and ran. He abandoned his post, his comrades, and his oath to Rome, crashing through the underbrush as war cries and death screams echoed behind him. His heavy equipment tangled in branches and slowed his flight, but terror gave him strength to tear free and continue running toward what he hoped was safety. Behind him, the sounds of battle gradually faded, replaced by the whisper of wind through leaves and the thundering of his own heartbeat. Marcus had saved his life, but in doing so, he had violated the most fundamental principle of Roman military culture: never abandon your comrades in battle. The weight of that violation would prove heavier than any equipment he had ever carried. When he finally stopped running, gasping for breath in a clearing miles from the ambush site, Marcus realized that his survival might be the cruelest punishment of all. In Roman society, there were fates worse than death, and cowardice in the face of the enemy was one of them. He had chosen life over honor, and that choice would define everything that followed. The fortress at Castra Vetera received Marcus 3 days after the failed patrol, his arrival marking the beginning of a process that would strip away everything that had defined his existence for 14 years. He stumbled through the gates alone, his equipment disheveled and his eyes hollow with the knowledge of what awaited him. The guards recognized immediately what his solitary return meant. Somewhere in the Germanic forests, better men had died while this one had chosen to live. News of the century's destruction had already reached the fortress through other survivors who had fought to the end before managing to escape in the battle's final moments. Their accounts painted a clear picture. Marcus Flavius Tertius had abandoned his post at the critical moment, breaking the shield wall that might have saved his comrades' lives. In an army where collective survival depended on individual courage, his cowardice had contributed directly to Roman deaths. Legate Aulus Caecina Severus presided over the court-martial with the cold efficiency that had made him one of Rome's most effective commanders. The wooden tribunal had been erected in the fortress's Principia, its raised platform allowing the assembled legion to witness justice being administered according to military law. This was more than punishment. It was a demonstration of Roman values, a reminder that the empire's strength depended on every soldier's willingness to place duty above personal survival. The evidence against Marcus was overwhelming and undeniable. Survivors testified that he had fled at the first opportunity, abandoning his position when the Germanic attack began. His own appearance, uninjured and equipped, while his comrades lay dead in the forest, spoke more convincingly than any witness testimony. There could be no doubt about his guilt, no mitigating circumstances that might explain away his cowardice. Roman military law recognized various forms of punishment for cowardice, each designed to serve as both justice and deterrent. Death was reserved for the most serious cases, while lesser offenses might result in reduction in rank, transfer to auxiliary units, or public humiliation. Marcus's case fell into a middle category. serious enough to demand severe punishment, but not quite meriting execution. Legate Severus pronounced the sentence with the measured tone of a man delivering established law rather than personal judgment. Marcus would be subjected to Fustuarium, the brutal punishment reserved for soldiers who had failed their most basic duties. The condemned man would be stripped of his military insignia and beaten with staffs by his fellow soldiers, not to death, but to the edge of death, leaving him broken in body and spirit as a living reminder of Cowardice's consequences. The punishment would take place at dawn, before the assembled legion, transforming Marcus from soldier to cautionary tale in the space of a few minutes. But first came the waiting, the long night in confinement, while he contemplated the price of his survival. The cell beneath the Principia was designed to hold prisoners temporarily, not to provide comfort or hope. As darkness settled over the fortress, Marcus sat on the stone floor and confronted the full weight of his choices. He had survived the Germanic ambush, but at a cost that made survival meaningless. Roman society was built on concepts of honor and duty that transcended individual life. A man who placed personal survival above collective responsibility had no place in that society. The dawn came grey and cold, matching the mood of the assembled legionnaires who formed a hollow square around the punishment ground. Marcus was led from his cell wearing only a tunic, his military belt and insignia already removed to symbolize his loss of soldier status. The men who would administer his beating were his former comrades, soldiers who understood that maintaining discipline required them to punish those who had failed their obligations. Centurion Gaius Silius, promoted to replace the fallen Cassius, read the charges and sentence in a voice that carried across the silent formation. Each word reinforced the lesson being taught. In Rome's army, cowardice was worse than death because it threatened the collective strength upon which empire depended. Individual survival meant nothing if it came at the cost of unit cohesion and mutual trust. The beating began with methodical precision, each blow delivered not in anger, but in adherence to military law. The staffs rose and fell, with the rhythm of duty being performed, transforming Marcus from soldier to symbol. His screams echoed off the fortress walls as bones cracked and flesh split, but the real destruction was spiritual rather than physical. When the punishment ended, Marcus lay barely conscious in the dirt, his body broken and his military career finished forever. He would survive. That had been the point of his cowardice and the irony of his punishment. But the man who had once marched with Rome's eagles was gone, replaced by a living reminder of what happened when individual fear overcame collective duty. The legion dispersed to its daily routines, the lesson delivered and received. Marcus would be expelled from the fortress once his wounds healed sufficiently for travel, sent into exile without citizenship or honor. He had chosen survival over duty in the Germanic forest, and now he would live with that choice for whatever years remained to him. In the weeks that followed, as Marcus slowly recovered from his injuries, he came to understand the true nature of his punishment. The physical pain would heal, but the social death was permanent. Roman society had no place for a man who had abandoned his comrades in battle, no redemption for cowardice in the face of the enemy. He would survive, as he had chosen to do in the forest, but survival without honor proved to be its own form of death. The Germanic tribes had claimed his comrades' lives, but Marcus had claimed something far more precious. His own soul, his place in the world that Rome had built through the courage of men better than himself. The final irony was that in saving his life, Marcus had lost everything that made life worth living. He would carry that knowledge with him into exile, a living testament to the price of cowardice in a world where honor mattered more than survival. If you found this historical exploration compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the realities of ancient warfare. What other aspects of Roman military life would you like us to explore? Share your thoughts in the comments below.